I'm Maya. And if I could tell you the moment I knew my wedding wouldn't go as planned, it was when I saw my sister-in-law inch toward the mic. It's strange how fast certain memories snap into focus. 1 second, everything's perfect. The next, you're holding your breath, watching a woman you've tried so hard to get along with try to steal your moment, again. But I guess, to really understand why that moment hit me so hard, you'd have to know the history behind it. I'm 25. I'm an architect, and I've worked really hard to get where I am. I've always been the kind of person who believed that if you're kind to people and stay true to yourself, eventually life evens out. That belief's been tested more than I'd like to admit, especially when it comes to Jack's family. Jack is my fiancé. Well, now he's my husband. He's the type of person who shows love in quiet ways. The guy who'll remember what cheesecake you like and show up with it when you're having a rough day. He's gentle, honest, the kind of partner who makes everything feel safe. But what most people don't see is how hard Jack had to fight just to be himself. His parents are first-generation immigrants, smart, proud, and deeply invested in academic achievement. When Jack was a kid, he was good in school, but not in the way they wanted. He was into chess, sports, all the things that didn't check, the boxes they cared about. Then there's Kylie, Jack's younger sister. 3 years younger, straight-A student, total overachiever. From the moment she could hold a pencil, she outshined Jack in every way their parents valued. And they didn't hide it, not even a little. Jack's told me things that honestly broke my heart. Birthdays where he didn't get a single gift because his test scores weren't good enough. His parents flat out telling him they were ashamed. Meanwhile, Kylie would have full-blown sleepovers and parties, just for being the smart one. That kind of comparison, it messes with you. And Jack still carries that weight. Kylie, though? She didn't just enjoy being the favorite. She used it. She made fun of Jack constantly, calling him dumb, lazy, even a loser. And what really gets me is that their parents never corrected her. It was like they silently agreed. When it came, time for college, the pattern didn't change. Jack was told they could only afford to pay for one tuition. And that money? Of course it went to Kylie. Jack was left to figure it out alone. Scholarships, loans, whatever he could manage. There was this fight. They never really recovered from it. Jack laid it all out, told them exactly how it felt to always come second. But they stood their ground, told him to grow up, make sacrifices, and be a man. Kylie just stood there nodding. She called him a failure to his face, told him he was making a scene because he couldn't handle the truth. After that, Jack packed his things and went low contact. No one helped him move. No one saw him off. Just silence. And I think a part of him never really expected anything different. He made it through college, built a life for himself, and even when his parents tried to come around later, like when he graduated, he didn't let them back in. They hadn't earned that, and honestly, I respected him even more for it. That's the version of Jack I met, the one who'd learned to live without approval, who built peace out of pain. When we first got together, he told me everything, without dramatics, just quietly laying the past out for me. I saw how deeply it still hurt him, even if he tried to play it cool. I knew right away. This wasn't just any relationship. I had to be someone he could trust. Someone who wouldn't take advantage of his softness. So yeah, when Kylie walked toward the mic at our wedding with that look in her eyes, I wasn't just worried she'd make a scene. I was scared she'd take one more thing from him. One more moment that should have been his. And the thing is, I'd seen it coming for a while. When Jack finally decided to reach out to his parents and introduce me, I knew how big of a deal it was. He hadn't been close to them in years. Not because he didn't care, but because every conversation with them felt like reopening an old wound. Still, he wanted to try. For us. So when they invited us to lunch, I went in with an open heart, hoping maybe it could be a fresh start. To my surprise, they were warm, polite, almost grateful. His mom even pulled him aside and said she was glad he reached out. She looked at me and said something like, "Thank you for bringing him back to us." They asked about my work, and when they found out I was an architect with a master's in urban planning, they lit up. Suddenly, I was their favorite person. I didn't take it personally. I knew what kind of validation they valued. Still, I was just happy to see them trying. For Jack, this meant something. I could tell by the way his shoulders relaxed for the first time in the entire restaurant. But just when it started to feel like things were heading in the right direction, Kylie showed up. No warning, no heads up. Jack stiffened the second he saw her. His parents quickly jumped in, saying they thought this was the perfect opportunity to bring the family together, that it was time to move on from the past. Jack didn't say much, just nodded, but I could feel how tense he got. At first, Kylie was polite. A little too polite, if you know what I mean. She gave me a stiff hug, barely looked at Jack, and took her seat like she couldn't wait for this to be over. But the second her parents started complimenting my background, something shifted in her expression, like a switch flipped. She started asking these oddly specific questions about my degree, my work. At first, it felt like normal curiosity, until she made a comment about urban planners murdering trees. I laughed awkwardly, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Every time I said something, she'd either disagree or correct me. Even when I mentioned something completely neutral, like loving the city we lived in, she found a way to twist it into a debate about gentrification. It felt like she was trying to undermine me in front of her parents. And Jack. I kept my smile on. I told myself she was just having a bad day. I looked at Jack, and he looked exhausted. Like this wasn't new. When the bill came, Jack offered to pay, which I thought was a sweet gesture. But Kylie, out of nowhere, said I should be the one paying. Because apparently, we were all here because of me. And since I made such good money, I could make good use of it. I stared at her, stunned. The table went silent. I wasn't even sure what to say, but I think my face said enough because her dad jumped in and told her she was being incredibly rude. Her mom agreed, told her to stop talking. Kylie stood up, furious, and stormed out of the restaurant like a child who'd just been told no. Jack just shook his head. That should have been my first real warning. But I wanted to believe it was a one-off, that maybe, just maybe, she was going through something I didn't understand. So I tried to let it go, but it didn't stop there. Even. Though Kylie barely spoke to us after that, she started watching all of my Instagram stories, every single one. I only have a small following, so it wasn't hard to notice. She never followed me, never liked anything, but she'd always be the first one to view every post. My design sketches, project updates, even stories of me and Jack, just hanging out. She was always there, lurking. Then one day, in our family group chat, the one we barely used, she dropped a Facebook link out of nowhere and asked, "Is this you?" I clicked it, confused, and saw an old photo of me and my high school boyfriend. We were hugging in it. I hadn't even remembered it existed. It was from years ago. And somehow, she dug it up, I replied honestly. Said, yeah, that was me and an old boyfriend. No big deal. But then she responded with, "You look awfully close. Maybe you should ask him to take it down. It's not appropriate anymore." I just stared at my phone, stunned. I hadn't even talked to that guy in forever. She had clearly gone digging. Like, deep. What was she even trying to prove? Before I could say anything, Jack replied, calmly but firmly. He said it was a normal picture and that he didn't care about something posted years ago. Then Kylie hit back, saying he should have better standards when it came to who he dated. I wanted to scream, but Jack didn't let her get away with it. He replied again and said something like, "I do have better standards. That's why I'm with someone who earns 4 times more than you." She left the group chat immediately after that. Later that evening, she called Jack in hysterics, crying and yelling that he had no right to humiliate her like that. He didn't engage. And when we hung up, all I could think about was how far she was willing to go just to tear me down. Her parents ended up calling us, apologizing profusely. They said they'd spoken to her and that it wouldn't happen again. They said she just takes time to adjust to new people. But this wasn't about adjustment. This was resentment, and I was finally starting to see it for what it really was. That day, something in me shifted. I stopped making excuses for her. I stopped hoping she'd eventually come around. Because sometimes people don't want to change. Sometimes they just want to win, even when there's nothing to compete for. A few weeks after all that drama in the group chat, something unexpected happened. Kylie texted me. It was weirdly polite. She said she wanted to apologize, that she knew she hadn't been the nicest to me in the past, and she was ready to let go of the prejudice she had against me. She even invited Jack and me over for dinner at her place, saying she wanted to get to know me better. I didn't know what to think. Jack was immediately suspicious. He read the message once and said, "It's bait. She's trying something." But I wasn't so sure. Maybe, just maybe, this was her trying to make peace. And if there was even a small chance that we could finally put everything behind us, wasn't it worth a shot? I convinced Jack to go. Told him that I wasn't expecting a miracle, just a conversation. So we went. Her place was beautiful, I won't lie. She lived in this modern, sleek apartment filled with all these high-end gadgets I didn't even know how to use. Her husband, Isaac, welcomed us in. He was older than I expected, 13 years older than Kylie, actually. But he seemed kind, warm even. While he showed Jack around his collection of expensive tech toys and collectibles, Kylie and I sat in the kitchen, chatting. At first she was surprisingly nice. She offered me wine, complimented my dress, even smiled in a way that almost felt real. Then, just as casually, she apologized again. She said marriage had changed her, that being with Isaac helped her see what really mattered, and she was ready to let go of all that old resentment. I smiled, said I appreciated the apology, that it was water under the bridge. But then she said something that caught me off guard. She looked at me and said, "I guess I hated you because you changed Jack." I didn't understand at first. I asked her what she meant, and she said, "After he met you, he was different, more confident, happier. He started talking to our parents again. I guess I felt jealous, like you were pulling him away." I tried to remind her that those changes were good, that Jack had needed to set boundaries for a long time, and if I helped him feel stronger doing that, it was a positive thing. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't really agree. Then the conversation shifted. She started talking about her new life, how Isaac made enough money that she didn't have to work anymore. She listed his assets like a realtor doing a pitch. His cars, his stocks, their vacation plans. I hadn't even asked, but she kept going, like she needed me to be impressed. I listened politely, then mentioned something about a new project I was excited about at work. It was a huge opportunity, something I'd been working toward for months. I think I was glowing just talking about it. But as soon as I finished, she cut in and asked, "So, when are you two getting married?" I told her we'd talked about it, but we weren't in a rush. We were happy with where we were, that we'd do it when it felt right. She scoffed. "That's such crap," she said. You need to push him to propose. You're not getting any younger." "What about kids?" I laughed, trying to keep things light. I said, "Jack and I don't want kids. We've talked about it. It's just not something either of us feels called to do." The look on her face changed, instantly. She went from fake calm to full-on shocked. "What do you mean you don't want kids?" she asked. "That's your duty as a woman. Why would you even be with Jack if you're not going to give him children?" I was stunned. I didn't even know how to respond at first. I told her that what Jack and I wanted was between us, and we were happy. That not everyone wants the same things. But she wasn't having it. She started yelling for Jack, screaming from the kitchen like something was on fire. Jack and Isaac came running in, totally confused. Kylie looked at her brother, pointed at me and said, "Do you even know the kind of woman you're with? She doesn't want to carry on the family line. She doesn't want kids. She's ending your bloodline." Jack blinked at her. Then, he actually laughed. He looked at her and said, "Do you hear how ridiculous you sound?" She started to argue, but Jack didn't let her. He told her flat out that he never wanted kids either, that we were on the same page, and that was why we worked so well together. He told her to stop acting like this was the 1800s and to stay out of our relationship. Things got tense fast, so I asked Jack if we could leave. I didn't want to stay there another minute. He grabbed our coats without saying a word, and we walked out. The second we got in the car, I broke down. I couldn't help it. I was crying so hard I could barely talk. I told Jack that if he wanted kids, he should tell me now. That maybe I wasn't enough for him. That maybe Kylie was right. But he stopped the car, looked right at me, and said, "If I wanted kids, I wouldn't be with you. I'm with you because I want you. You are enough. You've always been enough." I don't think I realized just how much I needed to hear that until he said it. That night, something finally clicked for me. Kylie's problem was never about me. It wasn't about Jack either. It was about her own emptiness, her own jealousy, her need to control everything because she never learned how to be okay with someone else shining. And from that point on, I stopped seeing her as someone I needed to please. Because I finally understood. No amount of kindness could fix someone who doesn't want to grow. It happened on a random Tuesday. Jack had a migraine, one of those heavy ones that makes the light hurt and the world feel too loud. I thought I'd cook his favorite meal to cheer him up, something simple, comforting. But we were out of a few ingredients, so I headed to the store. The first place didn't have what I needed, so I ended up driving across town to this little market tucked into a shopping complex. I wasn't in a rush, just moving through the motions, thinking about the wedding plans we'd been juggling all week. My mind was in that half-distracted space when I passed a cafe window. And that's when I saw her, Kylie. At first, I almost walked past, but something made me stop and look again. She was sitting in a booth near the window, leaned in close to some guy. Not Isaac. This man was younger, closer to her age, with messy brown hair and a playful smile. They were laughing, whispering, touching each other like they were the only two people in the room. And then, she kissed him. I stood there, frozen. My stomach dropped. It felt like I'd been slapped and couldn't figure out why. I wasn't close to Kylie, and after everything she'd done, I shouldn't have been surprised. But still, it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. This wasn't just some casual flirtation. They were completely into each other. Totally. Unbothered. Like no one could possibly see them. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures. Not to be dramatic or spiteful, but because I needed proof. I needed Jack to believe me. Back at home, I was still shaking when I walked through the door. Jack looked up from the couch, concerned, and immediately asked what was wrong. I told him everything, every detail. He kept asking, "Are you sure?" and I just nodded and showed him the photos. One by one, he stared at them silently and then finally said, "That's definitely not Isaac." We sat there in silence for a while, processing. Then Jack said something that surprised me. He wanted to tell Isaac. I hesitated. I wasn't sure it was our place. The last thing I wanted was another blowout, or to become the center of more drama. But Jack said something that stuck with me. He deserves to know. No one should be blindsided by something like this. That weekend, Jack reached out and met with Isaac alone. They talked quietly for a long time while I waited in the car, heart pounding. When Jack finally came back, he looked heartbroken. He said Isaac had been completely shocked. He had no idea Kylie was seeing someone else. But what stunned him even more was that Kylie was pregnant. Apparently, they had just found out a couple of weeks before. She hadn't told anyone yet. She wanted to announce it when the timing was right. Now, Isaac wasn't sure if the baby was even his. He asked Jack not to say anything. Not yet. He said he needed time to figure out what to do, and he'd handle it. I think he was trying to stay calm, trying to maintain dignity, but you could tell it broke something in him. Jack agreed, and we stayed quiet. But inside, I was spinning. I kept thinking about the way Kylie had looked that day in the cafe, carefree, like nothing mattered, like she hadn't just turned someone's life upside down. It made me feel sick. Still, we stayed out of it. We told ourselves it wasn't our responsibility to fix it, that Isaac had asked us to stay back, and we needed to respect that. But the weight of what we knew, it just lingered. It sat between us at night, while we were planning seating charts and choosing music and thinking about first dances. Her betrayal hung over everything, like a storm cloud we couldn't ignore. And then, of course, came the next hit. Jack's parents insisted we invite Kylie to the wedding. They said she was family, and it would look bad if she wasn't there. I tried to say, no. I tried to explain how fragile everything still felt, but they kept pushing, saying she'd changed, that things would be fine. Eventually, I agreed. But I told them firmly, they needed to talk to her. They needed to make sure she didn't make a scene. They promised me they would. I didn't believe them, because deep down I knew something was coming. I just didn't know how big it would be, or how many pieces it would shatter. The day of our wedding started like a dream. It was one of those rare, perfect mornings. Warm sun, clear skies, and the kind of peace you feel in your chest when everything just feels right. Jack and I had chosen a small garden venue surrounded by tall trees and soft lights, and for a few hours, everything really did feel magical. Our ceremony was intimate and emotional. My dad teared up walking me down the aisle, and Jack, he had this look in his eyes that made my heart stop. We exchanged vows we wrote ourselves, and for a moment, the entire world melted away. It was just us, him and me. No drama, no history, just love. After the ceremony, we moved into the reception. The music was playing, the food was amazing, and the people we cared about most were there. It felt like a celebration in every sense of the word. Like maybe, just maybe, the storm we'd been bracing for wasn't coming after all. But of course it was. We had a small lineup of speeches. My parents went first. My dad barely made it through his before choking up again, saying how proud he was, how I'd grown into this strong woman he admired so much. Jack's dad spoke too, and to everyone's surprise, he got emotional too. He thanked me for bringing their family closer, and it felt genuine. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, Kylie, inch toward the DJ table like she was waiting for a moment, watching, calculating. I had already warned my bridesmaids, told them if Kylie ever tried to grab the mic, they needed to shut it down, fast, and thank God they listened. because just as she leaned in to take the microphone, the DJ switched it off. Kylie tapped it a few times. Nothing. She looked around, confused, then tried again. Still nothing. She turned toward the crowd like she was gearing up for something big. But before she could say much, our maid of honor, Marfa, stepped in, smiling sweetly as she took the mic from her hand and started her own speech. The DJ turned, the mic back on the second it was in Marfa's hands. That's when Kylie realized. We had cut her off, deliberately, and she lost it. She started yelling, right there in the middle of Marfa's speech, asking how dare we silence her on such an important day. She shouted that she had something to announce, that she deserved a moment too. She tried to grab the mic again, but Marfa held her ground. Then, in front of everyone, Kylie climbed onto her chair and raised her voice above the music and chatter. "I'm pregnant," she shouted. The room fell into dead silence. She stood there, smiling like she expected applause, like people would cheer. But no one said a word. No clapping, no congratulations, just stunned, confused faces. Jack's mom was the first to speak. She whispered harshly for Kylie to sit down, that this wasn't the time. His dad nodded, telling her she was embarrassing herself. But Kylie wasn't done. She looked straight at me, her smile now gone, and snarled, "You just couldn't let me have one moment, could you? You're so insecure you had to steal even. This. You're a bridezilla, a loose woman who's been ruining this family since day one." I felt the blood drain from my face. Jack stood up, ready to speak, but before he could say anything, Isaac rose from his chair and walked calmly toward the mic. He reached for it, and this time, the DJ handed it over without hesitation. "I wasn't going to do this," Isaac said, looking around the room. "I really wasn't. But I think some people need to learn what happens when you keep pushing." Kylie turned to him, confused. Her smile dropped completely. Isaac turned back to the crowd. "Yes, Kylie is pregnant, but I'm not the father." A collective gasp spread across the room. I could feel every set of eyes turn toward Kylie. "She's been cheating on me," he continued. "For months. I found out a few weeks ago, and I stayed quiet because I wanted to be sure. So I hired someone. And now I am." He pulled out his phone and turned to Jack's parents. "Here, take a look." He handed it to them, and I watched as they scrolled, their faces twisted in horror, disbelief, sadness. Jack's mom actually covered her mouth with her hand, and Kylie. She was frozen. Just standing there, staring at Isaac like she couldn't process what was happening. Jack took a step forward and spoke directly to her. "Get out." She blinked like she didn't hear him. I said, "Get out," he repeated louder. "You've embarrassed yourself enough. You've embarrassed all of us. I'm done pretending like you're not a disaster." She finally broke. Tears welled up in her eyes as she ran across the room, grabbing Isaac's arm and begging him to come with her. He didn't move. He just looked away. She walked out sobbing, and the door shut behind her with a final thud that echoed through the silence. We tried to salvage the rest of the evening, but you could feel it. Everyone was shaken. The conversations were quiet. People kept looking over their shoulders, whispering. The entire tone had shifted. But as I stood there holding Jack's hand, surrounded by people trying to pretend nothing happened, I realized something. At least now. They all saw it. They saw her for who she truly was. Not the golden child. Not the misunderstood sister. Just someone who couldn't stand not being the center of attention, even if it meant burning everything down to get it. And even though she ruined the night, she couldn't ruin what really mattered. Jack and I still had each other, and no one, not even her, could take that away. The days after the wedding felt like waking up from a really vivid nightmare. Everything was still fresh. What Kylie had done, the look on Isaac's face, the way the room fell silent like it had been knocked off its axis. Jack and I didn't even get a chance to fully enjoy our honeymoon because the fallout followed us. A week into our trip, I started getting emails. At first, I didn't recognize the sender. The address looked random, like something someone would make just to hide behind. But the tone was unmistakable. They were from Kylie. The first one called me names. The second one blamed me for her public humiliation. The third said she hoped I never had children because I didn't deserve a family. There were more. Angry, hateful messages, all of them trying to pin everything that went wrong on me, as if I had ruined her life just by existing. I showed them to Jack, and he was furious. But he wasn't surprised. I blocked every address, every single one. I wasn't going to let her take up any more of my peace. I was done. When we got back home, we finally sat down with Jack's parents. I'll admit, I was nervous. A part of me thought they might try to defend her again, try to smooth things over like they always did. But they didn't. They were embarrassed, genuinely ashamed. They told us they had talked to Kylie after the wedding, and when she asked to move back in with them, they told her no. They said she needed to figure things out on her own, and that they were done enabling her behavior. That was a shock to hear, but honestly, it gave me hope. Jack told them, clearly and without hesitation, that we were going no contact with her. That if they ever tried to pressure us to let her back in, we'd walk away from them too. His mom cried, said she never thought it would come to this. But for once, she didn't fight it. She just nodded, and that was that. Meanwhile, Isaac filed for divorce. He didn't waste time. Jack stayed in touch with him throughout the whole process, and over the next few months, they actually got closer. They started meeting up now and then, sometimes to play video games, sometimes just to talk. It was strange seeing this new friendship form out of all that chaos, but it was also kind of beautiful. Jack finally had someone who got it. Someone who'd been on the receiving end of Kylie's destruction and walked away from it too. Isaac didn't give her a cent in alimony. And because they didn't have kids, the court sided with him. Kylie begged him to let her keep one of his cars, just one, but he said no. I don't think it was about the car. I think she just didn't want to feel like she'd lost everything. But she had. After that, Kylie went quiet. She stopped emailing, stopped trying to reach out. I don't know if it was shame or anger or just exhaustion. But whatever it was, she disappeared from our lives completely. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we could finally breathe. There were moments, especially during those first few months, where I'd catch myself thinking about her, wondering if she was okay, if she was still with the guy from the cafe, if she was really going to raise that baby on her own. But I never reached out, because deep down, I knew the truth. Some people don't want to change. They just want to control the narrative. And when they can't, they lash out, over and over, until there's nothing left. For a long time, I wanted us to be a family. I really did. I tried to be patient, to forgive, to keep the door cracked open in case she ever wanted to walk through it differently, but sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is close the door completely and lock it. We're happy now. Jack is thriving. I'm finally at peace, and there's no one left pulling at the threads of our lives trying to unravel them. We're happy now. Jack is thriving. I'm finally at peace, and there's no one left pulling at the threads of our lives trying to unravel them. If you've ever had to walk away from someone toxic, even if they were family, I hope you know you're not alone. And if you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear your story too. And if this story connected with you in any way, It would mean a lot if you hit that subscribe button. I'll be sharing more real stories like this. Raw, honest, and maybe a little messy. Because sometimes we all just need to know we're not the only ones.